The Scourge of God. Attila. He made emperors beg, then drowned in his own blood.
In the sweltering summer of 452 AD, the fate of the Western Roman Empire rested not on the swords of its legions, but on the words of an unarmed clergyman. By the banks of the river Mincio in northern Italy, an aging Pope Leo I rode out to meet a man whose very name struck terror into the hearts of millions. Across the river stood a vast, dust-covered army of nomadic horsemen who had just reduced the great city of Aquileia to smoldering ash. At their head was a solitary, calculating warlord who had spent the last 2 decades bringing the greatest empire on earth to its knees. No one knows exactly what the Pope said to him, but against all military logic, the warlord turned his army around and spared Rome.
This decision, shrouded in mystery, was one of the final enigmatic acts of a ruler who commanded an empire stretching from the Rhine to the Ural Mountains. He was the ultimate catalyst for the fall of antiquity. He is known to history as Attila the Hun. Born circa 406 AD on the Eurasian steppes and dying unexpectedly in 453 AD, Attila was the most powerful ruler of the Hunnic Empire, a vast nomadic confederation in Central and Eastern Europe. He was of Hunnic nationality, a tribal group whose exact ethnic and linguistic origins remain heavily debated by historians, though they are widely believed to have originated from the Central Asian steppes. His primary field was military and political leadership. Attila is considered one of the most influential figures in late antiquity because his relentless military campaigns and massive extortion of Roman wealth fundamentally destabilized both the Eastern and Western Roman empires. His brutal incursions triggered the Great Migration period, pushing Germanic tribes into Roman territory and ultimately hastening the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD. Attila was born into the Hunnic royal family during a period of immense geopolitical shift. He was the nephew of King Rugila, who ruled the Huns in the early 5th century. The world Attila entered was not defined by stone cities or static borders, but by the endless grasslands of the steppe. The Huns were pastoral nomads whose survival and supremacy depended on their mastery of horsemanship and the deadly composite recurve bow. From a very young age, Attila would have been trained to ride before he could confidently walk, enduring harsh winters and highly mobile living conditions. The economic environment of the Huns was parasitic yet highly organized. They sustained themselves not through agriculture, but through the extraction of resources from subjugated neighbors. During Attila's youth, the Hunnic relationship with the Roman Empire was complex. The Romans frequently employed Hunnic mercenaries to fight other barbarian tribes. It is debated among historians whether Attila spent time in the Roman court as a hostage, a common Nicolatic practice of the era to ensure peace, but he undoubtedly grew up observing the deep political fractures and economic vulnerabilities of the fractured Roman world. The most profound influence on Attila's strategic mindset was the reign of his uncle, King Rugila. Under Rugila, the Huns learned that the true prize of dealing with Rome was not territorial occupation, but systematic financial extortion. Rugila had successfully forced the Eastern Roman Empire to pay an annual tribute of 350 Roman pounds of gold to maintain peace. This taught the young Attila a vital lesson. The threat of violence was often more profitable than violence itself. Another massive influence was his complex relationship with Flavius Aetius, a Roman general who had spent time among the Huns as a hostage in his youth. Aetius learned Hunnic military tactics and forged personal relationships with their leadership. The intertwined destinies of Attila and Aetius, who would later become his greatest adversary, shaped the military and diplomatic landscape of Europe for over 30 years. Attila learned how the Roman military apparatus functioned, understanding its heavy reliance on foreign mercenaries and its bureaucratic sluggishness. Attila's transition from a royal prince to a recognized geopolitical power
occurred in 434 AD. Upon the death of their uncle Rugala, Attila and his older brother Bleda inherited the leadership of the Hunnic Empire as co-rulers. Almost immediately, the brothers made their presence felt on the world stage. In 435 AD, they negotiated the Treaty of Margus with the Eastern Roman Empire. The terms were highly aggressive. They demanded the return of Hunnic fugitives, secure trading rights, and most crucially, the doubling of the annual tribute to 700 pounds of gold. For the first few years of his rule, Attila remained somewhat in the background of his older brother. The Huns largely observed the peace with Rome, focusing their military efforts on subjugating neighboring tribes in the east to solidify their nomadic confederacy. However, this period was crucial for Attila. It allowed him to consolidate loyalty among the diverse tribes under Hunnic control, including the Ostrogoths, Gepids, and Alans. His rise to singular recognition was marked by calculating patience and the systematic buildup of military forces. Attila's true breakthrough moment, the event that transformed him into an unparalleled terror in the eyes of the civilized world, began in 441 AD and culminated in 445 AD. Realizing that the Eastern Roman Emperor, Theodosius II, had stripped the Balkans of troops to fight the Vandals in Sicily and the Persians in the east, Attila and Bleda launched a devastating invasion across the Danube River. They sacked major cities, including Singidunum, modern Belgrade, and Naissus, modern Niš, the latter being destroyed so thoroughly that when Roman diplomats passed through years later, the riverbanks were still covered in human bones. This brutal campaign forced the Eastern Romans into a humiliating peace in 443 AD, vastly increasing the tribute. However, the ultimate turning point in Attila's life occurred 2 years later in 445 AD. Bleda died under mysterious circumstances. While historical sources are not entirely definitive, it is overwhelmingly accepted by modern historians that Attila assassinated his brother to seize undivided control of the Hunnic Empire. By removing Bleda, Attila consolidated total autocratic power. He was no longer a co-ruler managing border disputes. He was the sole undisputed king of a massive war machine. As sole ruler, Attila launched a series of campaigns that forever altered the map of Europe. In 447 AD, using the pretext that the Romans had failed to pay their tribute, he launched a massive second invasion of the Eastern Roman Empire. His armies pushed deep into the Balkans, destroying over 70 cities and reaching the very walls of Constantinople. The resulting Treaty of Anatolius was economically devastating for Rome. Attila demanded an immediate payment of 6,000 pounds of gold in arrears and tripled the annual tribute to 2,100 pounds of gold. In 450 AD, the narrative dramatically shifted westward. Honoria, the sister of Western Roman Emperor Valentinian III, seeking to escape an arranged marriage, secretly sent her ring to Attila and begged for his help. Attila strategically interpreted this as a marriage proposal and demanded half of the Western Roman Empire as her dowry. When the Romans refused, Attila mobilized an enormous army of Huns and allied Germanic tribes, crossing the Rhine in early 451 AD. This led to the famous Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, often called the Battle of Chalons, in June 451 AD. Attila's forces clashed with a massive coalition army led by his old acquaintance, the Roman general Aetius, and the Visigothic king Theodoric I. The battle was a horrific bloodbath. The 6th century historian Jordanus claimed casualties reached an impossible 165,000 men, a figure heavily debated and scaled down by modern historians, though it remains one of the largest battles of antiquity. While tactically a stalemate, Attila was forced to withdraw, marking his first major strategic setback. Undeterred, Attila invaded Italy the following year, in 452 AD. He famously besieged and razed the city of Aquileia. The destruction was so absolute that survivors fled to the coastal lagoons, establishing the foundations of what would eventually become the city of Venice. It was during this campaign that he met Pope Leo I and subsequently withdrew from Italy, likely due to massive supply shortages, widespread disease in his camps, and news of Eastern Roman counterattacks across the Danube, rather than purely spiritual persuasion.
Attila is best known for his epithet, the Scourge of God, flagellum Dei. He became famous because he achieved what few other barbarian leaders could. He systematically humiliated the Roman Empire at the height of its administrative complexity. He did not merely raid, he institutionalized extortion on a geopolitical scale.
People paid attention to Attila because of his terrifying efficiency and his mastery of psychological warfare. The Huns utilized lightning-fast cavalry strikes, feigned retreats, and showers of arrows that devastated rigid Roman infantry formations. Furthermore, Attila shocked the Romans by mastering siege technology, utilizing battering rams and siege towers during the Balkan campaigns, a rarity for nomadic armies. His reputation as an unstoppable force of destruction was heavily amplified by early Christian writers, who framed his invasions not as conventional wars, but as divine punishment sent to chastise a sinful Roman world. His name became synonymous with the apocalyptic end of civilization.
Despite his monstrous reputation in Western literature, accounts from those who actually met him reveal a highly intelligent, restrained, and pragmatic leader. The most reliable portrait of Attila comes from Priscus of Panium, a Roman diplomat who visited Attila's court in 448 AD. Priscus expected to find a savage brute surrounded by chaotic wealth. Instead, he found a master of statecraft. Priscus noted that while Attila's generals and allied kings dined off silver plates and drank from gold and silver goblets, Attila himself ate nothing but meat from a simple wooden trencher and drank from a wooden cup. His clothing was clean but entirely unadorned, lacking the gold, gems, or elaborate weaponry favored by his subordinates. This performative modesty was a calculated leadership style. It projected an image of a hardened warrior who was above the corrupting luxury of the Romans. His motivations were distinctly pragmatic. He was not a religious fanatic aiming to destroy Christianity, nor was he a mindless conqueror. He was a mafia-like don operating on a geopolitical scale, motivated by the acquisition of wealth to distribute among his loyal chieftains, thereby holding his fragile tribal confederacy together.
Attila was far from invincible, and his empire harbored fatal structural weaknesses. His most significant failure was his inability to transition his nomadic confederacy into a stable, sedentary state. His empire possessed no bureaucracy, no unified legal code, and no sustainable agricultural economy. It was held together entirely by his personal charisma, his terrifying reputation, and the constant influx of Roman gold. When the conquests stopped, the empire starved. His invasion of Gaul in 451 AD was a strategic miscalculation. By overextending his supply lines and forcing a conventional pitched attle at the Catalaunian plains against a highly motivated coalition of Romans and Visigoths, he fought on his enemies' terms and suffered severe losses. Public criticism of Attila was naturally one-sided. Roman historians and Christian theologians painted him as a literal demon, criticizing his cruelty, his polygamist lifestyle, and his lack of classical civilized virtues. Modern historians criticize his complete lack of foresight regarding the sustainability of his empire. He built a spectacular war machine that was doomed to collapse the moment its driver died. Attila's short-term impact was apocalyptic for the Roman world. He completely drained the Eastern Roman treasury, collapsing the local economies of the Balkans and causing widespread famine and depopulation. The psychological terror inflicted by his armies caused massive waves of refugees, disrupting the social fabric of late antiquity. His long-term influence, however, fundamentally reshaped the trajectory of world history. By driving Germanic tribes, such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Burgundians, across the Rhine and Danube rivers in their desperation to flee the Huns, Attila acted as the primary catalyst for the Great Migration. These displaced tribes ultimately dismantled the Western Roman Empire. Without Attila, the timeline of the fall of Rome and the subsequent birth of medieval Europe would have been drastically different. However, the human cost was immense. Countless ancient cultural centers, texts, and local populations were entirely erased during his campaigns.
Today, Attila is remembered as the ultimate archetype of the barbarian conqueror. In Western Europe, his name remains a cultural shorthand for brutality, destruction, and ruthless aggression. Conversely, in Hungarian culture, he is often viewed with a degree of national pride, seen as a powerful and heroic ancestral figure, despite the fact that modern Hungarians, Magyars, arrived in the Carpathian Basin centuries after the Huns disappeared.
His image evolved uniquely in medieval literature. In Norse sagas, he appears as Atli, a treacherous tyrant, while in the Germanic epic, the Nibelungenlied, he is portrayed as King Etzel, a relatively noble and tolerant, albeit tragic, monarch. While his physical empire vanished entirely, leaving behind no monuments, no ruined cities, and no written literature, his legacy lives on in the very borders of modern European nations, which were drawn by the migrations he initiated. In early 453 AD, following a massive feast celebrating his marriage to a beautiful young woman named Ildiko, Attila retired to his bedchamber. The next morning, his guards broke down the doors to find the greatest warlord of the age dead, having suffered a severe nosebleed or burst blood vessel, choking on his own blood while his new bride wept in the corner. His warriors mourned him by cutting their faces, declaring that a king of his magnitude should be mourned with the blood of men, not the tears of women. They buried him in 3 coffins, one of gold, one of silver, and one of iron, and diverted a river to obscure his final resting place. Attila's life stands as a profound testament to the fragile nature of absolute power.
He possessed the genius and the terror required to bring civilization to the brink of annihilation. Yet because his empire was built entirely on plunder and personal magnetism rather than institutions or laws, it dissolved into dust almost the moment his heart stopped beating.